Mine's spinning.
Happy Saturday, y'all. Welcome to the pilot episode of our new series, me and Max conjured up during our last weeks together hanging out, called Have You Met? And I totally wanted our first guest to be BC on my left. Well, yes, Phil, Unfiltered. So yes, thank you so much for joining us on our show today. How have you been?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm okay. Been another Saturday. It's pretty hot here in California, but I'm surviving. So could be worse. Could definitely be worse.
No, I appreciate you making time because I know you're super duper busy. You have a bunch of work and podcasts and other forms of content that you contribute to and that you work on. So I really just wanted to take like a moment of your time to get some get an idea of like who you are as a person and get to know you and introduce you to our community over on Movie Madness and Entertainment. And our host Max is more than happy to host and has a few questions of his own too.
Well,
yes, I do, that. Phil. Are you ready?
I am. I think I'm ready. Like SpongeBob famously says, I'm ready.
Yeah, I think like just to kind of set the tone of the show, like I know a lot of us know Phil from around the concentric circles of like different podcasts and channels and stuff. Like he is part of the Four Nerds network. He is also like you do a Batman podcast pretty regularly, right? That you have.
I didn't know that.
You have named in your subtitle right there on screen, right?
Right, correct. Yeah. So that show started in 2021. We're actually doing our first live show here in a few weeks. Like it'll be on my channel, my Unfiltered channel, for the first time in about 2 weeks. My co-host Craig, he's I've known him for a long time. We both worked at, I'm pretty sure that's Dawson, heading Four Nerds Network show there, right there. But yeah, Craig is was camera shy for a long time. He's not really into, streaming and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to put my co-host down. He's just not active on the internet as much as I am. I've been pretty active on, social soc meds and a bunch of other stuff for years. I have a degree in computer science and network technology. So I'm very much plugged in as much as I don't want to be. So it's kind of like a second nature thing for me now. Excuse me. But yeah, that podcast, The Eternal Night, it's funny how that one started, because I initially had one show called Superhero Stress years ago that lasted for about 2 years. And then I decided to put an end to that and focus entirely on just Batman, because by the time I had gotten started with Superhero Stress, it was like late 2019. Avengers Endgame had come out. DC was, well, we've all seen what happened with DC films as it's turned out. And, the conversation surrounding superheroes in general just became kind of exhausting, more or less. So I decided to just focus on Batman. For a long time, for a little while, I did throw around the idea of getting a Spider-Man show started. But, the two people that I wanted to get it with, we just have completely different schedules and things just didn't work out because we're all just really busy with other stuff. But fortunately, I was asked to also be on the Four Nerds 2 years ago, I think 2022. Something like that. So it's been about almost 2 years for that. And then just recently, as of May, like late May, I started writing reviews for Multiverse of Color. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, to say the least, in terms of just podcasting and creating and writing reviews and being on live streams and stuff. Because for a long time, I was actually pretty adverse to being on live streams. I thought for when I was younger, I used to think stuff like this was kind of pretentious.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually really stoked that you kind of set the groundwork for your platform, because for the longest time I always felt like Phil is such a strong contributor on all these different shows. Like anytime he's on, the conversation is just elevated. But I was always like, I know you have your Eternal Night podcast, but because a lot of us kind of just, buzz around YouTube a whole lot. I was hoping that maybe someday you would create your own, streaming platform to be able to just like have you just go on the mic, not have to worry about any type of structure or anyone, present that might be holding back your opinions or whatever. So yeah, you being truly unfiltered, that's what I wanted to see. So I'm eager to kind of get into more about what drives your passions, as far as like what got you into wanting to talk specifically about like comic book media and TV and film. And I know you're also an avid gamer too, which we barely even hear about. Like I feel
and
like you bring it up, but then like it just sort of like passes by.
And your shirt, we got to hear about your musical taste too at some point.
Yeah. Yes, favorite bands and all that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess to start it off, the name, right? Unfiltered, where does that come from? I mean, obviously it's a take on like, unfiltered, no filter, and then my name, right? Like, 'cause my name's Philip. So that really began in, I guess, middle school, high school, because I've always just been very open with my thoughts and very, unfiltered with how I feel. And I say what I say and I feel how I feel. I don't really try and let other people dictate my opinions on things. I don't try and, have my opinions validated by other people who feel the same way. Like, don't get me wrong, you feel the same way, fantastic. You don't feel the same way, okay, fine. But the thing is like, when it comes to movies and television and video games, I'm very passionate, would be the one way to say it for sure. But like, it really just kind of leans into just the fact that I truly do speak my mind on a specific subject. Like, case in point, everything going on with like the Superman movie being made by James Gunn. If you know me and you know how I feel about that guy's movies, I'm kind of half-half. I don't particularly think the suit itself for Superman looks incredible. I don't think Green Lantern looks all that great. I'm going to give the movie the benefit of the doubt and go watch it at the end of the day, but like, I'm not enthused by it. But that's the thing. A lot of people would take what I say, like I just said, and probably automatically come to the assumption, oh, he must hate everything James Gunn does, or he hates, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, that's not it at all. I'm just very blunt and honest with how I feel about things. So that's kind of where the name stems from. As far as just being passionate about this stuff, I mean, when I was younger, my parents got divorced at 11, so I've always just found other ways of just kind of escaping reality. Like my best friend and I, we would stay up really late watching weird movies and playing video games into the late hours of the day and into the night, going into the day. Like, one of the first movies we ever watched at 16 when we figured out what uTorrent was yeah, I know I'm kind of putting myself there on the spot, and maybe the SWAT team might come and get me here in a minute, but we downloaded Pulp Fiction, and I remember watching that for the first time at 16.
Downloaded?
Yeah. Just downloaded, right? But we watched Pulp Fiction for the first time, and I remember just being kind of just blown away by how graphic and I wouldn't say vulgar, but just how like visceral that movie is, and just how the way that movie flows together, the way it's paced, the way it's edited, the dialogue delivery, performances, like everything about that movie is just incredible to me. And a lot of my love for comic books and superheroes and a lot of like, pop cultural media, there's a couple avenues I suppose I could take in it, but it probably begins with like my grandmother. It's funny, like my dad's mom had a huge influence on me growing up, because she would always have this VHS case full of VHS movies and TV shows, and she'd also have cable. So I used to watch like Batman the Animated Series, X-Men, and Spider-Man, and a bunch of other stuff on cable. And if I felt like watching a movie, I'd always throw on like Lost World, Jurassic Park, or whatever she had in her VHS cabinet. And then my other grandmother, my mom's mom, spoiled me and my brother rotten with video games, because she had a Super Nintendo and a PlayStation 1 all hooked up to one TV. So I was avidly playing.
That's a cool grandmother.
Yeah, I know, right? Like I was avidly playing Super Mario, Final Fantasy 7, and Final Fantasy 9. And that was also coupled with the fact that I had a Game Boy Color with Pokemon Blue, Silver, and Yellow. So I always had like a video game in my hand, and I always had some kind of controller in my hand, and I was always in front of a TV. I'm one of those 90s kids that just grew up in front of a television. So technology's just kind of always been in my purview.
Me too. I see you got those Pokemon balls ready there.
Yes. Yes. I am a huge Pokemon fan. I have Charizard tattooed on my right leg.
Oh, dang, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, I know Max, you and I spent a lot of time talking about VHS, or you specifically VHS, but also me getting indoctrinated into cassette tapes. But as far as like physical media questions, I would love for Max to kind of take the wheel and kind of get
Oh,
Phil's take on physical media as well. I'm sure that's a like
ye-
spicy topic.
yeah. Well, the one I had, but since it's a good segue, I'll do that question first. Because you mentioned your grandmother and your growing up in the '90s of that VHS. What was the first one that you remember getting for yourself, or your family, or your parents getting for you, that you remember taking home and watching, or even a video game? Maybe do one of each, one a movie and a video game, if it was a VHS or a DVD, or one of your first like cherished games as a kid.
So the first VHS I remember off the top of my head was one of two things. It was either Batman Forever, or
Ooh,
it was the very first episode of the Fleischer Superman cartoon from the 1940s.
nice.
So yeah, it was definitely one of those, if not maybe both. But I definitely have vivid memories of watching the
And
Fleischer
those,
Superman on repeat when I was younger.
that's
Um,
awesome. Are those your most watched as your childhood? Those most watched physical or movies or tapes?
Yeah, it was probably that. It was probably more Batman Forever because I am a
Okay,
Batman fan. My other tattoo is of the 89 logo on my arm, but like
cool.
definitely one or the other, if not both, in like a rotation. Like I also had Jurassic Park. I had a ton of VHSs growing up. I honestly don't know what happened to them. Probably just lost over
I
time.
bought them. That's what happened. I have
Probably.
them now.
That sounds about right. As far as a video game though, that I got handed myself, that would probably be a Sega Genesis with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Ooh,
Yes.
yes.
Classic.
Classic,
That's how I
right?
know, like, you're an OG. You're just checking all the boxes for like, everything. So
Yeah, it was like a tough tie between that and N64 and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Smash Brothers, and Pokemon Snap. And then I want to say it was the Sega Genesis, though. I feel like we had that first before we had the N64. But I think
The,
as
Se-
like
the
as,
Sega Genesis was a life changer for me with that, like the pack in Sonic. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Because I had my mother. This is your interview, but my mother bought an Atari for the same price a Nintendo could have been because it had a keyboard. So I had to wait to get a genuine game console, and that Sonic. Oof, I'm glad you said Sonic because that was one of my favorites too.
yeah, I
It
had
was a-
Sonic and I had Sonic Spinball. I had like the coolest Sonic game and then the hardest Sonic game.
Mm-hmm.
oh, Spinball. Yeah.
Spinball, yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I think like for me, yeah, my first introduction to Sonic was actually Sonic Adventures on the Dreamcast. That's the first one that I remember playing, ironically enough, and that's why I kind of have an affinity for the 3D Sonic games a little bit more than the 2D ones.
Sure.
But yeah, like to your point about like first introductions to consoles, I kind of have like a similar history as well. Like we're both California kids, so like chances are we probably saw a lot of the same commercials and watched
More
some
than
of the
likely.
same, yes, a lot of the same TV shows as well, same time zone and stuff. We're about the same age too, or we are the same age, so yeah, like a lot of your childhood mirrors mine too, so that's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, yeah. You know, my grandma, who she had the N64, or not the N64, she had the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation. She also had her own VHS cabinet, and that was where I found Star Wars.
Ooh.
So I watched Star Wars at a very early age, like the OG trilogy, all three of them in VHS. So by the time the prequel trilogy came out, I was like at that perfect age for it to be like, okay, you've seen the OG trilogy as a child, even though it's before your time. Now here is a brand new era of Star Wars specifically for you. So Star Wars has always just kind of been there in my life as well.
Cool.
It's like, I hit that perfect trifecta in the 90s. I grew up watching Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man the Animated Series, Star Wars on VHS, and, Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network back to back. So it was literally that all kind of just informs my humor, my childhood, how I present myself more or less. Because I am kind of cheeky in an Ed, Edd and Eddy kind of way.
Can you also fill us in on your first music CD or cassette too?
Oh, that's
while
easy.
we're thinking.
100%. It was
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
the third album from Van Halen that had Run with the Devil
Ooh.
on it.
Cool.
And then the next one after that was Ride the Lightning by Metallica.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, my dad had a pretty huge influence on my musical taste. My mom was very disappointed by that because she loves country music and I don't at all. like
I
at all.
remember you're just like adamantly like hard no, and I'm just like, really? No Johnny Cash, no Dolly Parton, no Willie Nelson.
I mean, there's very, very few that I will like give credence to, but other than that, like just country as a whole, I'm just like, nope, I'm good.
Hard no.
Hard no. Yeah.
Well, like what to your point about you just having like that classical sort of like, I guess, training on, just pop culture and media as far as like how it frames our discussions on it right now. Because a lot of us are in like, our 30s and 40s, and we have a lot of like similar opinions and tastes too. But
Hmm.
what I like about you in particular is that you're very pragmatic. Like whenever, like, again, I'm going to like hype up your podcasting skills. You have a really just like it's just a natural ability to just, organically bring up your points of view and like how um, you process information as far as like in TV and film and comic books, and you present it in a very like grounded, easy to understand way. So I guess like my point is that like what kind of what is it that allows you to not have like your personal bias cloud your ability to just view media objectively, because that's what I really admire about you. So I'd like to hear more about that.
So that actually kind of stems from a little bit of high school experience. I spent all 4 years of high school in 2 classes run by the same teacher, rest in peace, Coach Marion Adams. He ran the TV and radio portion of Verlinda High School, and that's where I went and graduated from high school. And I was in the TV and radio editing classes all 4 years, and even, the beginner and advanced classes. So my ability to just kind of remove, personal bias and everything that pertains to just not only how I feel, but just looking at things from a more concrete, very like analytical perspective, and even like pulling up, citing your sources and finding information by various means, and really kind of articulating that with a balance of, the two things of having, my personal feelings and then also trying to be, concrete in what I'm trying to get my point across with. It really does kind of stem from that background. And then when I got into college, I took, a couple media classes, I took a couple film classes, and I think the one class that I think kind of really pushes that forward is a debate class that I didn't do quite well in, but I took a lot away from, because I had a teacher who was constantly just ribbing students and just very much like, challenging them to really hone in on their focus for whatever they were trying to debate their points for. And in that class, even though I didn't really necessarily excel in it, I still kind of take away some things that I look back on now, and I'm like, this is actually really poignant to what I do regularly with podcasting and, internet scan, like, keyboard battles and shit like that, even though I try not to partake in too many keyboard battles anymore because it's a waste of time personally. But, when it comes to being a fan of pop culture, it's really easy to be passionate and let, your thoughts flow a little freely, but also try and maintain the fact that, if you want to be a little bit more professional about it, if you want to try and be in that world, you can't just be like, oh, this is effing terrible, or oh, this sucks, oh, this is boring, oh, the dialogue is awful. You can't look at it from such a surface level perspective. You have to articulate why you feel that way. That doesn't also come off in a way where it again reflects any personal biases. So when it comes to, say, something more recent, like something like The Acolyte, you see a lot of people on the internet, specifically in YouTube, and they could I've seen it last few weeks, just people with thumbnails of whatever episode is out, and they put the word trash over it. And I'm just like, okay, well, if you want to cater to the Phantom Menace, that's entirely your business, but I'm not here for that. And also that could also be, a bias speaking through, because I do know a lot about Star Wars that isn't just pertaining to the 9 movies and the television shows that Disney has done. I have dabbled in a little bit of expanded universe. So when Disney does pull stuff from the expanded universe, if I don't know it, I know a few people who would probably know it, and they reiterate, yeah, this is absolutely, from expanded universe. Here's the reference point in which you should look at. And I take time to look at it, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they really were pulling from that, and they took their own creative spin on it. Dope. But then, you've got a lot of Star Wars fans out there, and the famous quote is, nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. And it couldn't be any more true today. And I honestly think there's a lot of nuance lost in conversations regarding Star Wars today, because some fans just want to cling to the OG trilogy as if it's just some sacred piece of literature that just cannot be touched or undone. And some form or another. It's like you can't have anything that expands upon that. And the same goes for like, Batman or Spider-Man or anything that's pop culture related. And, given the fact that Spider-Man and Batman have been around for like 60, 80 years, there's gonna be some things in their pantheon, in their library, in their mythos that you could probably point to and be like, I'm not really a fan of that. And it's true. But as far as like Star Wars goes, you're probably going to come across something similar too. Not everything that Disney's done, I think is, flawless or perfect or anything like that. But at the same time, I'm not sitting here with a torch in hand being like, boo, Disney, Kathleen Kennedy needs to be fired. Like, I think another important thing to remember with all of this is like these corporations who own these IPs, they are not our friends. They are in a business to make money. Whether you like or dislike said thing, that is entirely up to you. But at the end of the day, their prevalence and their popularity, it speaks volumes. I mean, I just saw last Wednesday that The Acolyte has the second biggest viewing behind Obi-Wan Kenobi in terms of Disney Plus viewership. So people can hate watch all they want. Disney's going, thanks for watching our show. That's all we wanted.
That's a market.
Exactly. Like, numbers speak volumes. And when it comes to just, again, like articulating myself in a certain way, I try and look at things again, like from a, you kind of have to take the best of both worlds of how you feel and what is concrete and kind of mesh the two together. And that's ultimately kind of where I fall on it. I used to be pretty heavily just emotionally reactive to the things that I liked and very emotionally reactive to the things that I did not like. Whereas now, as I grow older, I try and look at things from, a balance. I try to keep a balanced perspective. I mean, I still have my thoughts on certain shows, like case in point, Stranger Things season 5 is about to come out, and I honestly couldn't care less for it. I'm just not.
Oh no, You triggered me, Phil.
Sorry, buddy.
What? I mean, it's been what? Like it's been a long time. Like these kids are in their 20s now, right? I don't know. Like, do you think it's just time to wrap it up? Is that?
I do. I think
they are.
I think there's that aspect of it, but I also just think that I don't really think the Duffer Brothers are all that clever. I think a lot of stuff they've done is just kind of a redux or a rehash of stuff I've seen elsewhere, just done better personally. But the only characters I really kind of care about in that show are Hopper and Eleven. Other than that, Winona Ryder's being almost a caricature of who she is as a person, and then the other kids I don't really care for. I think they're all kind of.
Man, you are unfiltered.
I am. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, but that all said, I understand the appeal. I see why people gravitate towards that show because it has like this supernaturalistic Stephen King kind of feel. It's very 1980s. It's very like, oh, look at this shiny new thing that is kind of playing with themes and ideas that we've seen elsewhere, but it's doing its own thing with it. I get the appeal for it. It's just not my bag. Same thing with Andor. I understand the appeal there. I don't really think it's all that it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, it's all those IPs that you mentioned are kind of like a mixed bag, but what again, like just, circling back to why we wanted you as a guest is because you do have like your strong, unfiltered opinions, but you do have a way of being tactful at how you deliver them. And you do frame it with, you're very, on top of the receipts. Like it's, I don't know how like you have like such a like, photographic memory of like so many things that you can like pull dates and, like exact quotes and stuff like on the fly. So I think that's what makes you a really strong content creator, or even just, sort of like, I don't want to say pundit, but just, just like, or an influencer. I don't know, like just some uncheesy word like that says like, yeah, you're someone who can like, like I said, elevate the conversation and hold people accountable to that same sort of level of how to present not an argument, but just sort of like how you present your point of view. So I think like you're doing a great job at like making a standard for etiquette, and that's what I really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, having been in a argumentation debate class at a young age and growing from that by various jobs and being in various different classes and eventually getting my degree in computer science. And then also, growing up being a kid from, the MySpace era to the Twitter era. And now I'm just looking at all of social media like this is not healthy for most people, but here we are. It's just, you can see where people say things for immediate reaction, and they say things for immediate engagement, and you can see what does trigger people and what does not trigger people in terms of engagement. And I just kind of look at that and go, I don't really want to partake in that, because I don't really want forced likes or forced, following. It's not wrong. I don't think it's wrong to just say, hey, I'm this close to getting this many followers. If you want to give me a follow, if you like what I like, by all means, give me a follow. But if it's like an everyday thing, I think that could come off maybe a little too try hard in a certain respect. Or say, if you're a content creator and you immediately hop on a bandwagon that's, like a popular narrative, so to speak, like case in point, again, like The Acolyte, if you want to entertain the Phantom Menace and hop on the hate train, you're well within your right to do so. That's not exactly my purview. I don't really share that kind of perspective. I don't really partake in, punching stuff down to, fish for engagement, so to speak. I just kind of speak my mind on it. And again, I'm not some super huge fan of The Acolyte or anything. I just think that
I am.
I probably lean more towards the favorable side, but I also think that, like, it's not the absolute worst of the worst when it comes to Star Wars, because I'm of the mind that there isn't really any bad Star Wars, personally.
One thing I did want to kind of pivot off of that, now that you mentioned sort of like content creation practices and how folks, entice engagement or, trigger audience engagement, good or bad. What creators influence you, or even just like podcasters or folks who are, in the public platform sharing their opinion on pop culture stuff?
That's a really great question, honestly. So it largely kind of starts.
You don't have to say me. It's okay.
I mean, I've tuned in.
No, we don't even know each other that well, but I'm glad to meet you more, Phil.
Let's be real. Like, I've tuned into a few of your streams. I've seen your panels, and
that's
more
why
often
you're not
than
around much. No, I'm just kidding. I like you, Phil.
I've seen your panels, and I've seen,
okay,
friends you've had on, and
that explains a lot.
There are people that I agree with, and there are people that I don't necessarily agree with. But that's all fine and dandy. We don't have to agree on everything all the time, because that makes everything boring. But when it comes to just being who influences me, who inspires me, who do I look up to in terms of just the overall community, I think it kind of starts from honestly Squadcast Media, like Scott McClellan and Tim Yoko, like those guys, like they are. When it came to podcasting, that was one show I found in 2018 by way of another podcast I used to listen to that I don't necessarily listen to anymore. But like, the way that they would kind of articulate themselves and break things down, because for a long time, the fun thing to do was punch down on DC films and, make fun of DC and, constantly compare it to Marvel Studios. Whereas I think Scott and Tim, they took a very much more, no, this is what we like about these films.
Check them out. I never heard of them.
Yeah, they've got an entire backlog. Look, just search Squadcast Media on Patreon, YouTube, whatever podcast catcher you have. Like their whole network's pretty solid group of guys. But yeah, Scott and Tim over at DC Squadcast. Those guys are just super down to earth and super nice. Matter of fact, Ray and I met Scott last year at Full Circle. Scott Scott is hands down like one of the coolest DC fans I've ever met. He's super knowledgeable. His library of DC is just absolutely insane. His just deep knowledge of DC lore just completely surpasses a lot of people that I know. He's just a really intelligent dude that just knows what he's talking about. And when it came to podcasting, I just really gravitated towards what they did as far as DC goes. But then also in the podcast sphere, I also have to give credit to the Movie Film Podcast by Zach, who's created by Zaki Hassan and Brian Hall. Zaki is a critic for the San Francisco Chronicle, and he is a teacher at, I believe, San Jose State. And then Brian is a writer on a couple different things. Like he's written for Puppy Dog Pals, and he also writes for Young Jedi Adventures. So, and they're, natural born 1980s kids grown up having seen like Batman 89 in theaters. So getting their perspective on like everything from the 80s forward and just in movies in general, because both of those guys have just a really wide background in terms of just movie making, movie critiquing, and movie, like how to, write reviews or how to just like look at a movie from a very prismatic standpoint of like how it was made, how the sausage was made, who wrote what what kind of drama may or may not have happened, and just their kind of overall perspective on it. Honest to God truth, they are the closest thing to a modern day Siskel and Ebert I've heard in terms of podcasting.
All right,
And
cool.
those guys are just really down to earth and really intelligent, and just they know what they're talking about, and they're really cool dudes. And I just enjoy listening to them. I've started listening to both shows, like DC Squadcast and Movie Film Podcast, around the same time. It was like 2018. So that's kind of where I really, that's where the podcasting really kind of kicked off for me, of where I wanted to go with that. As far as like YouTube, I kind of have to give credit to Scott for this one, because had he not had Dave Pena, the film junkie, on his show, I would have never even bothered going onto YouTube and seeking out like people who do YouTube stuff.
Okay.
And Dave was the first one I'd ever like watched avidly, and like, you know, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's pretty cool. He's down to earth. He's very animated like I am. And I just understood like the, you know, what he was selling, more or less, you know, like, and that was really to me like the light bulb moment of, you know, maybe YouTube people aren't as bad as I thought they were. And so that's kind of where I started dipping my toes into other stuff. And I started watching some Twitch streamers too, like Ohio Dave, way back in the early days of the pandemic. He would always stream like, you know, Rocket League, or man, what else did he used to play? He used to play a whole bunch of other shit, but mostly Rocket League. And, you know, that is kind of where, and then also, like, I think dipping my toe into the Snyder fandom too, and by way of like Scott and Dave.
Is
and
the water
Ohio
good?
Dave, I mean,
Is the dipping your toe in the water?
I mean, I guess it depends on what area of the pool you're in, right? So, you know, just coming into that fandom and seeing all these different kind of content creators really just kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, there's more than one way you can talk about this stuff. It doesn't necessarily just have to be podcasting. It can be, you know, making a video on YouTube. It can be doing a live stream on YouTube. It can be openly on Twitch. It can be anywhere. So I guess that those would be my influence, my personal influences, honestly.
Did you feel like there was kind of a learning curve going from just like an audience member into being a content creator? I know for me there was. I was personally a little intimidated, but I wanted to get your thoughts around it. Like, what made you, you know, just like, F it, I'm going in.
I think what really did it was being invited on the Four Nerds for the first time, and just kind of getting the feel of, you know, how different it is to say, you know, meet up with someone via, you know, Facebook Messenger or Discord, or even like in StreamYard, and just hit record and rip the audio, as opposed to being live and engaging with a chat, engaging with other people on a panel. And just I guess for me, it really kind of started after I was invited on the Four Nerds, and Dawson asked me and another person, I think it was Austin Leanne, he asked us if we wanted to do like a comic book based portion for Four Nerds. And for a while we did. Unfortunately, that kind of fell apart after a few episodes. I don't really remember why. It's just, you know, Austin parted ways for some reason. Don't really know. We haven't really talked about it since then, but yeah, you know, and that really was like, even though that didn't last very long, it was kind of a learning curve, like, you know, getting to pull up chats and, you know, pulling up like, just bits, you know, little clips or things like that. Like it wasn't necessarily like a hard learning curve for me, but I picked it up pretty quickly because, you know, having a background in computer science, it's, you know, I look at a computer screen, I look at software, I look at the Windows icon, or I can look at the Apple icon, and I can pretty easily figure out where things are, especially, and it's the same exact deal with streaming software. If you just pull up the brand, or you can pull up the banners, you can pull up whatever and figure it out for yourself if you have an aptitude for that kind of thing. And I feel like, you know, not to toot my own horn, but yeah, I feel like that came pretty natural to me pretty quickly. I don't know how long did it take you to get the hang of it?
Yeah, it wasn't until, you know, Max, he's definitely someone who engages with his audience very proactively. He acknowledges everyone, literally everyone in the chat, which I wanted to pretty much, all my, you know, best practices I took from Max, you know, so thank you, Max.
Really? I haven't figured this out yet.
It's just like, you're so approachable and personable, and in how you acknowledge and engage with everyone. That's what I wanted, was just, you know, an open, welcome, non-pretentious platform, which I believe both of y'all, you know, are create as well on whatever show or podcast that you're on. And I also wanted to kind of like ask Phil, in terms of like the topics that you focus on. I know like you're an avid gamer, you are very like, you know, well versed in pretty much every generation that you were, you know, born to, experience. But I want to know, why is it that we have not really gotten that much gaming content from you, and what you're going to do to, change that, if possible.
So it's funny. I used to Twitch stream kind of avidly, but the drive to do it, I think, is the hardest part, is finding the drive to sit there for hours on end. And I think honestly the hardest thing for me, and I'm still kind of getting used to it too, is acknowledging everyone in the chat and trying to be more engaging with the chat. But also, I think it's also pretty easy to get discouraged when you see other people who have, larger followings, and they're able to do more with, their either their live streams or their Twitch streams, because because they can afford to. And I'm pretty reserved with my finances. Oh, sorry, excuse me.
Oh boy.
Oh,
Got something caught in
okay.
my throat. Yeah, I'm good. But yeah, I'm just very reserved with my finances, so I just haven't really invested in my Twitch stream or my live streaming to do those extra bits. And I probably should if I wanted to do more gaming. Like I told myself after I went to PAX, I was like, I'm going to invest more in doing more Pokemon centric content. For a while there, I wanted to do like 3 different YouTube channels, and I was like, no, that's just not going to work. It's not feasible. I don't feel like doing that. So eventually I just came to the conclusion, like, no, I'm just going to have my channel, and it's going to be, I'm just going to have segregated like one playlist of like, the Eternal Night, and then there's going to be something for Pokemon or Zelda or whatever, or just like maybe a reaction to a new trailer for a game or a movie or something. So I'm really just going to try and be a little more multifaceted, as opposed to just trying to focus in on one thing. And even though that's not, I've talked to a few content creators about that, and they're always like, just find your focus. You want to focus on one thing. And I'm like, it's a problem for me because I can't focus on one thing at a time.
I have the same problem.
But I
It's a
think
tough one.
I think a lot, like all 3 of us, since we have such a vast spectrum of interests. Like for me, for a while, I was combining my movie and gaming content and podcasts and some shorts and videos all on one platform. And it was and I know some of the best practices that you referenced, Phil, as far as content creators who are giving advice based off of what would grow a channel. But for me, not necessarily was my goal to grow, because I always knew that there would be a core group of folks who would support no matter what content I would create. And I think that's true it's definitely true for Max, and I definitely think that it's true for you, Phil. Like if you were to just make any type of gaming content or movie, TV news content, you may see that you will start to see your core group of folks who just show up no matter what. And I think that's because of the appeal of our I don't want to sound too pretentious, but the appeal of our individual content style or content creation styles and our personality. Like that's the main draw to any channel, I think, outside of the nature of whatever topics they're talking about. So yeah, I know for me it was really intimidating because of the task of being just super on top of a schedule and type of content that I'm putting out, and all this other stuff that I kind of just dived head first into and sort of overwhelmed myself with. But for you, I think it's great that you have gathered your bearings across multiple different platforms and podcasts and types of content, that you're able to make more better informed decisions in terms of how to go about the rest of your journey. So I actually do like that you have been taking your time and not just jumped in into something just out of haphazardly. I feel like you've been very good at just getting your bearings and seeing how the landscape of content creation has kind of shifted over the years. And yeah, you're moving at your own pace, which is great.
Honestly, I think about something you asked me a while ago. I forget what stream it was on, but you posed a very interesting and difficult question that I'm not sure I had, the best answer for. And that was whether or not I deserve to be paid for the content that I created. And I've been thinking about that for a while. And honestly, after having been on the 4Nerds and I don't really want to dive too deep behind the scenes, but yeah, we split portions of, super chats that we get, right? And that's just one facet of getting paid via YouTube, right? And the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, okay, if I'm going to go ahead and create this stuff and people take the time to listen to it or people take the time to watch it, then maybe there is a justification there for some kind of monetary value. But at the same time, also, like for what else I do in terms of like Multiverse of Color, you know, I'm not getting paid to write my reviews, but the cool thing about being able to write reviews for House of the Dragon, The Acolyte, The Boys, and whatever else is going to come down the pipeline as, you know, time goes on, because of the fact that I am now writing stuff like that, I have been posed with the opportunity to go to San Diego Comic-Con, while not necessarily like a paid position. The payment for me, the reward for me, is being able to go to something that I've been wanting to go to for like over a decade, something that is very, you know, has been on a bucket list for me as a pop culture dork, just to, you know, finally go to the big one, like get the big fish, like San Diego Comic-Con. And like, you know, that to me is the real reward. I don't really care too much about whether or not I get paid to write these reviews eventually, you know, but again, like the real reward for me is like being able to participate in something like that, and maybe somewhere down the line, maybe a D23, maybe a Star Wars Celebration, maybe, you know, New York Comic Con, if I can even swing it. That to me is like the real reward of being, you know, able to finally articulate some written thoughts that I have in, excuse me, terms of the stuff that I do enjoy watching. So yeah, that's kind of where my head's at with that as of right now. But yeah, I am trying to take it at my own pace. Sorry, Max, go on.
I just wanted to I have some very important questions prepared. No, I have the weird ones.
Sure.
I just have a quick one to throw in there. If you had all the money in the world, what would you do? Because this is how I like to live my life. I like to remove the money aspect and what I need to survive, and just like, how would I do the day? And I try to accommodate that. I'd be playing video games, spend time with my family, my wife, things like that. But what would you do if the equation of money was if it was out of the equation, and you could just do whatever you want?
So I don't know if I'm understanding. Are you asking me like what I would do if I had all the money in the world?
Yeah, it's just
okay. So
if you had all the money in the world, what would you do each day? What would be your perfect day? What would you know? What would you?
I guess it depends on how much I'd be getting.
All the money in the world.
All the money in the world.
Money is no object. You could just do anything.
Well, I mean, I would probably buy DC Comics outright.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'd probably do that. And then I'd probably, you know, throw some money into cancer research.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Probably that too. Maybe, I mean, since California is in such a hole in terms of homelessness, I'd probably try and open up as many homeless shelters as I could. You know,
so you do. It sounds like activism is important to you too. Like if you have yeah. Okay, cool.
I mean, I do.
I was really more selfish with my answer. I was like, what? But yes, active. That's great, Phil.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably also maybe buy out a gym, or actually, no. You know what? I think the big one for me, now that I really think about it, would be I would open up a studio for all our mutuals to come and do whatever they want.
Cool.
Completely bankrolled 100%. Like if you want to do a podcast, you want to make a movie, you want to write a television show.
I would be that. You couldn't get me off the couch. I would be there constantly, Phil.
Just go ahead and make you manager of the whole damn place. How about that?
Okay. Oh yes. give Phil all the money in the world.
Oh, that's actually a good segue to one of my questions. So you may have already covered this indirectly, but specifically, what are, you know, maybe like one or two pro tips for someone who may be watching this, maybe like, you know, a Phil Jr. or someone who's just like, I want to be like Phil when I grow up. Like, what would you tell that kid, like, if they want to get into any type of content creation similar to what you've done already?
Stay away from drugs.
Apt advice.
I mean, seriously, I would say, you know, like the old Nike slogan, you know, just do it. Like find something that you are 100% passionate about, feel how you feel, articulate your thoughts well. Don't be a jackwagon about it. Don't put other people down for not liking something that you like, vice versa. You know, just, and above all, you know, try to have fun with it, and really feel who you can talk to about stuff that you do enjoy talking about, right? Like just find your tribe. That was told to me at a very young age, and it took me a long time to understand what that meant. And I don't mean this in like a tribalistic way. I just mean like find your crowd of people that you feel comfortable engaging with on a regular basis, because I can't tell you how many people that I still talk to from the Snyder fandom, and even before that from other previous, Facebook groups or whatever, that I'm still friends with to this day. A lot of people could look at, internet friendships as like kind of a, if you were in the 90s, you say you had friends on the internet, or even in the late 2000s, people would kind of raise an eyebrow. But I feel like in 2024, in a post-COVID world, that's not entirely like out of the realm of possibility anymore. I think in a way, social media has like achieved that thing of colonizing friendships in a certain respect. And it does have its downsides, but I think ultimately, like, the goal is to, you bring like-minded people together. And I feel like that is ultimately, what can drive you to make more successful content, is having those peers who are going to encourage you and keep you honest, as opposed to, having friends who are just going to be like, yeah, man, your video was great. Whether or not they watched it, that's a whole other conversation. You can have your thoughts on that. I don't know. I mean, but ultimately, like, I think having honest friends who value not only like, your perspective, but also value your image, are probably the most important internet friends you can have.
Cool.
How about you, Max? Or do you have a follow-up question that you wanted to?
Oh, I had another strange one. If you were Neo in the first Matrix film, and you could download any skill, you could just download it and you'd be like something that you want that's hard to obtain, or anything. What skill would you download? Like, it was just jacked into you, and you could karate. You could be, maybe they haven't really done that in the Matrix. Maybe you're really good at baseball or something. I don't know, sports. What skill would you want? I tried to think of really strange questions.
You finally stumped him.
No,
I know. I know.
For every other question.
That's a good one, but like, what skill would I honestly have? I mean, I would download the ability to have all available combat knowledge. I would honestly like try and, kind of Batman it, like obtain every combat style possible.
So you already have all the money in the world for my other question, and now you want all combat. You do want to be Batman. That's what I found out. You want to be Bruce. Yes, you want to be. You're exactly Bruce. You said, I want to do activism. I want to give to people. I have all the money. I want all the combats. Would you get your cape and cowl once you got all those combat skills?
I will neither confirm or deny that.
Okay.
No, that was a fun question. And one of my questions was, in case anyone in the chat wants to post a question as well, feel free to do so, and we'll integrate that into the conversation as well. And can you share a fun or unexpected fact about yourself that the audience might not know?
That one might have actually stumped me pretty good. I think, okay, so actually, I did just think of one. I am probably one of the only few people on the planet who has met both directors of both versions of Dawn of the Dead. I have met both George Romero and Zack Snyder.
That's an accomplishment. Yes.
Yeah. And the funny thing is like, meeting Zack Snyder, that was like kind of part of the fun for Full Circle. Meeting George Romero was by complete random happenstance. So,
oh really?
I was with my older cousin and my uncle down in San Jose around 2015. It was right before he passed away, and there was like this little pop-up horror convention in like downtown San Jose, and right next to it, half of Metallica was playing like some of their songs. I don't remember which members it was, but it was definitely like half. Like 2 members of Metallica were playing a small little show. And then on the other side, there's this little pop-up horror convention. Well, at this table, I see all these movie posters, various different languages. And I see one of Dawn of the Dead, and right next to it, Night of the Living Dead in Japanese. And I was like, no fucking way. Wow. Pardon my French, but like, I was like, no way. I walk over to the table, and there's this dude, big old horn rim glasses, white hair, really curvy smile. And I'm looking at the posters, and I was like, I remember watching this in my horror film class like 3 years ago. And he looks up and goes, yeah, I remember when I made it. And I looked at him, and I was like, oh, fuck, you're George Romero. And he goes, hi, nice to meet you. And I was just flabbergasted. I was like, you were the godfather of the zombie genre of filmmaking. Like, you you made this movie on literally next to nothing. It is one of the most successful films of its time. Like, whoa. And he was like, yeah, it was fun. Dawn of the Dead was a much more exhilarating experience. And I was like, I'm sure. But yeah, that was
That's
very...
a cool story. That it makes it more special because you weren't expecting to meet him that day. Like
Right.
most people, when they meet like someone that's influenced them or some they follow or heroes, it's just like you have to plan. You have to really try hard to get there. But you just happened upon it. That's really cool.
Yeah. And when I had met Zach, I was just completely like starstruck. It didn't even occur to me at the time. I was like, hey, like I wanted over time, like I was like, I wonder if he's ever met George Romero. And I had the one opportunity to ask him, and I was just like, I really love your movies. I was just so like happy at the fact that I met the guy who'd made my favorite superhero movies of all time. And I was just like, I love your movies. I love your characters. I think you're a genius. Like, can you please sign my poster? Oh, and by the way, I have a Batman podcast. So I wish I would have asked him if he ever had a conversation with George Romero, because honestly, if you look at Dawn of the Dead, like his version of Dawn of the Dead, and you look at Romero's Dawn of the Dead, like there are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of key differences. But I think both versions are just excellent displays of, their respective times in history of like how to do zombie movies.
That's interesting, Kyle. Yeah, back in the original Dawn of the Dead. Yeah.
Yeah, that there were a lot of questions, but I didn't want to take up like too much of his time because he was just happy to be there and looking at these posters and stuff, and just it was really cool to meet him.
No, I'm really stoked. So I know we I was in the chat, and I think you might have been on screen when folks were talking about the film event. So like there's going to be like a 6-day Zack Snyder film event in LA at the Egyptian Theater owned by Netflix, like immediately right after Comic-Con, right?
Yeah.
But I can't go. And then I don't know if you said that you might be able to go or not.
I can't go. I wish I could. If I could swing the time off, I would literally just stay another week. I would go from San Diego to LA and do all the days, but I just can't swing it. I wish I could, but I can't.
No, for sure. Like the small amount of notice definitely didn't help. But I know how these events go. They kind of, are right. They kind of have only so much time to like let us know. So I get that.
Yeah.
And let's see. I think Bruce had a question in the chat, right? Or did we cover that?
Bruce, my good pal, my other I do a podcast with him called The Power Hour. Check us out. Hey Phil, question: if you were writing JLA, who would you pick for your lineup and why?
Okay, so here's a fun little bit. So after Justice League had come out and before the Snyder Cut was officially announced, I did a very small personal treatment of a Justice League movie that was a softish sequel to the initial movie, and it did not feature Batman or Superman. And it included Wonder Woman as the main lead, Martian Manhunter, Cyborg, Flash, and Green Arrow.
Ooh, Green Arrow, I like that.
And it was called Justice
Again,
League.
you can't even Batman. He's sort of like Batman too. Green Arrow. He's got similarities.
Yeah, and I think I had Black Canary in there too because I was trying to have it. It was kind of like it was in the DC extended universe more or less, and I wanted like familiar characters. I wanted pre-established ones, so I had Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Flash from the initial Justice League film. Since Aquaman was getting his own sequel, I kind of left him out to be the King of Atlantis, and Batman and Superman were off doing their own thing. So it was really just like, an invasion story with Wonder Woman at the lead. Martian Manhunter was also kind of there to be, lightweight introduced. Green Arrow was there as well, along with Black Canary. There was going to be some kind of romantic entanglement between the two of them there, and the ultimate antagonist was Starro. And this was also before the Suicide Squad film had revealed that Starro was the villain. So I was just going off of just pure fanboy fiction at this point. But yeah, if I was writing like a JLA comic, I would absolutely probably do Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Jon Stewart, Wally. No, not Wally. Barry Allen, and then probably Hawkgirl, Shayera Hall. Nice,
I like it.
No, it's solid lineup. Max, did you have another fun question to ask?
I'm tapped out. So it's up to you, Ray. Take us home. We got a few minutes left. We could go overtime. It's up to you. You both. You run the show, so
I've got no problem with that. If you guys want
If
to
you
go,
I
wanna
do
go
want to
like
be
2
respectful of
yeah, 10
of
or
folks'
15 minutes.
weekends.
Yeah, but that's up to you, Rhea. This is your pilot, our pilot episode, but more structured is better. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to be respectful of folks' time, and yeah, we want to keep these shows, nice and punchy. Get to know some awesome content creators, and make sure to check out Phil on your YouTube channel. I linked it as the Unfiltered channels on
that's
YouTube.
correct. That's going to be
Okay.
the one that is going to start hopefully having stuff in it. My biggest hurdle right now for that is where I'm going to edit my stuff and how I'm going to record it. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to do it through StreamYard or if I'm going to try and record some bits in OBS or if I'm going to try and just download an entirely different type of software like Adobe. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I'm running pretty short on time. I know for sure I'm going to start doing live streams via StreamYard. That much is for sure going to happen.
No, definitely. And yeah, I don't want to set a timeline or anything. I don't want to put any pressure on you for that. But folks, just stay tuned. Subscribe to subscribe to Phil's YouTube channel. Be sure to follow him on Threads. And that is going to be your primary platform as far as like keeping in touch with you, or do you have another preferred platform?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much on good authority. I'm no longer on Twitter. I have a lot of personal reasons for not being on
Okay.
that application anymore. It's
That's why I was having trouble finding you to reach out for this. I was like, where is he?
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter anymore. I'd cut that cord in November of last year. I've been off Twitter for that long, and it's funny. Like I'm even though I'm not on Twitter, I still get like DMs and like Instagram or like personal text messages of like pictures and stuff, and even Discord messages of other things that people share on Twitter. I'm like, I don't care. But yeah, I'm mostly on Threads. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Vero, and I'm on Blue Sky. It's all the same it's just at Unfiltered, just like that. That's really where you can find me pretty much anywhere except for Twitter. The podcast Eternal Night is it's on Instagram and Facebook. Just search the Eternal Night or TEK_podcast. That's where you can find that. And I write for Multiverse of Color. That's a website unto itself. So if you just happen to go to multiversecolor.com, you can see my reviews of The Acolyte, The Boys, and House of the Dragon. Right now, there's the current three things I'm writing. I'm sure I will get, some stuff to write for once I'm at San Diego. How I'm going to write is another hurdle I have to figure out very shortly. I have 2 other laptops that I can use, but the software and on them is a little outdated. So I'm wondering if it would just be easier for me to just kind of go to like Best Buy and buying just a tablet with a makeshift keyboard on it and getting it done that way. I'm not 100% sure on what I'm going to do yet. I'm just going to have to check and see the stability of both my laptops that I have and see if they're still usable. But yeah, just be on the lookout for my reviews on Multiverse of Color and pay no attention.
Oh, your kitty made an appearance finally.
She did. Yeah, that's my little chaos machine, Kiki. Like after Kiki's delivery service. That's what she's named after.
So
That's a good one.
I heard from you actually that is not just there's not just one cat present.
Or 2. Yes.
Yeah.
Where's the other one? I don't know where the other one is. She's right here.
Anthony, I didn't even know this. Anthony has a question for you, Phil, if you're up for it. What's everyone's thought on Arkham show being? I didn't know it was canceled. Is that confirmed? That's sad.
Phil would be able to articulate the news a little bit, a lot better actually. So yeah, if you want to dive into Anthony's question.
So, I think the show was canceled for a couple of different reasons, but also the way it was worded, and I don't even remember who broke the story initially. It was either Deadline or Variety, but they said that it was initially like supposed to be in the Reeveverse. I think that's kind of misinformed because James Gunn had said that Reeves was developing it to be a part of the DCU that he's working on. So I feel like there's a bit of misinformation going on there. Ultimately, I think the reason it was canceled is, a lot of people can point to, oh, James Gunn is just making room for Brave and the Bold, or, oh, James Gunn is trying to cancel the Batman. I don't think that has anything to do with it at all. Honestly, the passing of it, there's a big difference between that and HBO or Max being like, we're not moving forward with this. There's a very big difference between those two things. And honestly, the way it was worded in the article is HBO/Max is not moving forward with the Arkham series. Now, the same thing happened to Batman Cape Crusader. Max passed over it. They did not go forward with it. Then it went to Amazon Prime. the same thing probably could happen to Arkham, the Arkham series, whatever it was supposed to be. But I also think that given that Max and HBO have, they've got Waller, they've got Peacemaker, they've got Booster Gold in the works, they've got the Lantern show in the works. I'm not sure that they could have justified having another TV show on their dock for DC. Like, they've already got 4 there. 2 of which one is filming, the other one is going to be casting very soon and probably start filming next year. And then Amanda Waller, I'd wager, probably starts filming sometime next year as well, if Jeremy Carver's finished writing up the scripts for that. I'm not 100% on those details, but that'd be my guess. And if all these crazy rumors of Booster Gold's getting cast, if that's true, he would probably be getting cast for a project that isn't his, and he might show up sooner rather than later. Be that as it may, though, going back to Arkham, I think ultimately the reason it was passed on is because they just have way too many DC shows at the moment that they're currently funding. So doing another one, and also, like, they're about to release the Penguin. So to me, it just feels like, do they want to try and oversaturate this right now? Or also, another thing to take in consideration, what if Matt Reeves is going to utilize Arkham in Batman Part 2? Then what would be the point of having this TV show showcase a different version of Arkham for a more seasoned Batman with a bunch of different rogues galleries if his second movie is maybe going to include some version of Arkham? I'm honestly not sure. There could be a couple different reasons of why it got canceled, honestly, but it also did go through a change creatively a couple different times. Like, it started off as a GCPD show with Joe Barton at the helm. They parted ways due to creative differences. Then it turned into an Arkham TV show, and that had one showrunner attached to it. Then they parted ways from creative differences. And then James Gunn, not too long ago, said, oh, it's being developed in the DCU. And now we're hearing that it's canceled. So honestly, I'm of the mind that whatever happened to it, I'm just going to wait and hear it from the horse's mouth himself. If James Gunn comes out and says why it was ultimately passed on or canceled or whatever, that's probably going to be the reason as to why. He's the head honcho of DC Studios with Peter Safran. So whatever they decide goes forward. But also, there is the other side of the coin, i.e. HBO/Max, and that would be Casey Bloys, who's the head of that division of, Warner Brothers, because HBO/Max is under that Warner umbrella. So ultimately, like, the passing of it kind of fell on his shoulders. Like, he probably made the decision to be like, we're not moving forward with this. Some people would probably say David Zaslav, but I'd be like, well, considering it was HBO/Max, no, it probably fell on Casey Bloys. So he was probably the one who went, we're probably going to pass on this. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, I don't really care, and I'm a Batman fan, but at the same time, I'm just thinking about, like, some level of logistics with it. Who would watch a show about a bunch of Batman inmates if you couldn't? And that's another thing. Like, if they were to greenlight this show, what villains would have been available? Because chances are someone up there would have said, well, you can't use Joker, you can't use Harley Quinn. All the big names might have been left out, because we've seen this before. Like, DC is very picky and choosy with who appears where. So I don't know. Ultimately, I think it was just passed over for probably budgetary reasons, number of content, number of different levels of content. Like, there's probably a hard reason why it was passed over, but whether or not we find out, it's remained to be seen.
This is actually a good, branch off of Max's previous question that you mentioned you would buy DC Comics. So how would you approach this whole situation? Like, I guess if you can kind of, give us a high level overview of, like, what you would potentially change or, keep, like, yada, yada, yada.
I think for me, I would... it's a business, right? Like, I don't have a business degree. I don't have any, like, hard experience in running a business. I can only just look at it from, like, an outsider's perspective. But honestly, I think a mandate would be, Batman sells, so have at least 1, 2, maybe 3 Batman centric books. Keep Elseworlds, because Elseworlds have been a large part of the reason why comics have been thriving for like the last 30, 40 years. Those Elseworld tales where you take established characters and twist and turn certain events or certain things about their history and do your own spin on them. I think that's a very much needed thing. I think that's why DC is honestly thriving a little bit more than Marvel is at this point, because they just brought back the Elseworlds banner. That's why you're getting things like Dark Knights of Steel 2 from Tom Taylor. That's why you're getting, Batman Ceasefire. That's why you're getting a ton of these other like, Elseworldy Black Label. Thank you, Dawson. Like these Black Label stories, like they're the reason why I think DC is still holding its head above water. But ultimately, I think also if I were in charge of DC, I would absolutely like mandate like at least 1 or 2 Batman books, a Superman book, maybe Supergirl, Wonder Woman, absolutely, at least 1 Green Lantern story. Nightwing's a pretty popular character, so keep him running in syndication. All your heavy hitters, they would absolutely have books on the go. They would absolutely have books on the shelf for sure. And if something isn't selling, maybe cancel it and turn that character into another thing, or bring them into something that is a little bit more palpable. Like I haven't been at a comic book store in a few years. I used to work at one very briefly, and that experience didn't really end well for me. So I haven't really stepped foot in one in a few years. So I don't even know what the current comic book culture is like. But as of right now, from what I do know, I would probably keep Chip Zdarsky on Batman because he's doing some pretty interesting stuff there. But that's a bigger question that I don't think I have the knowledge to answer, because I'm just not as in tune with the comic side of things as I used to be. But it would be fun to own DC Comics and just kind of say, hey, put out this Batman book.
That is another fun segue. I think our friend Eric Z in the chat had a question for you, and you can actually like share exactly what your mission is going to be at Comic-Con based off of his question. So he asked,
is it this one?
I think it's 2 parts. Movie Madness Entertainment. Maybe I missed this. Phil, are you covering anything in particular at San Diego Comic-Con? Is this your first time? I've been to San Diego Comic-Con more times than I can count. Mostly, sorry, I don't know what BTS is. The most important thing, bring water, a few snacks. Your own Wi-Fi is important, but have a good time. So yeah, what's on your agenda for Comic-Con?
I know for sure I have to get this exclusive Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel mat for my editor and another guy. I have to get them. There's a very exclusive Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel mat that's being available at San Diego, so I have to pick that up for them. My ultimate goal is to make it into Hall H. Like that is like my primary focus. But I do know that in the coming days, like Andy and everyone else that I work with and with Multiverse of Color, we're going to sit down and really coordinate like who's going to be where and when and who's going to do what interviews, who needs help where. But yeah, the ultimate focus for me, and Andy even knows this, is like I'm going to try my damnedest to get into Hall H, because I'm hoping that Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, and Joseph Quinn and Eben Moss-Bachrach. Like I'm hoping to see the cast of Fantastic Four. I went so far as to buy a Fantastic Four shirt from Amazon. It will be here on Monday. I am going to try my damnedest to be in that hall if and when they show up. So I would certainly hope that does happen. But I think most of my Thursday is going to be spent walking the floor and getting a feel for the booths and stuff, because I've been to a couple conventions here in Sacramento, and I kind of have a feel for what it's kind of like, but I've never been to San Diego, and it's going to be probably a bit of a different experience. I'm going to be staying with my cousin too, and he lives about 20 minutes away from the convention center. But yeah, ultimately on Thursday after I pick up my badge, it's going to be just kind of walk the floor, get a feel for the place, meet up with some friends that I know are also going, like Rhea, of course. And then there's a couple other people that I know are also going by that also have press badges. So we're probably going to convene, maybe get some food, and just kind of shoot the nonsense of what we like and don't like. But yeah, like ultimately, like my number one focus and goal is to get into Hall H.
Awesome. Ooh. Yeah. I know I definitely want to be part of that effort too. Like for me, I don't really have an agenda too much. Like I'm able to go because I know one of the exhibitors. So for those 5 days, I'm just sort of there as a participant. And yeah, like if I can help make Hall H happen for you, for your work, and then William for his work too, and whoever else needs to be a part of it, and my own sort of like enrichment as well, just being able to like have have that experience, I'm down to, have that. So I'm stoked. I haven't gone to Comic-Con since like, I think like almost 20 years ago before I got crazy. So I'm really excited to be able to hang out with you again because I
Yeah.
had a good time.
Yeah, I mean,
full circle.
there's also like, if there are panels for maybe the Penguin, maybe if DC Studios has presence, if they decide to show off Creature Commandos, because I know like they also have a lot of animation presence there. Like I would love to capture like a panel if they bring Creature Commandos there. I don't know that they
Look
will.
out for James Gunn. I'm the sole person predicting that he's going to make an appearance, even though he said, I'm busy filming. I think he's the type of guy that would actually do it if he could.
That's a
So
non-answer.
Here's the thing. Zack Snyder famously went to Comic-Con when he was filming Batman versus Superman.
Because he never answered straight. They're like, are you going? He's like, well, I'm going to be really busy filming. That's not a no.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. I agree completely.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. First person to agree with me.
But I do think
by Phil.
I do think that the Penguin might have presence there. I would not be shocked to see Warner Brothers and DC Animation announce their next slate of films following Watchmen Part 1 and 2. I may or may not know what one of those projects is, but I can't say it until it's officially announced. So yeah, it's going to be pretty cool, hopefully for the animation side of things. And again, like if I make it in Hall H and seeing Marvel Studios, that would just be an absolute dream come true. Because I do like Marvel. I do like have an affinity for Marvel Studios, and it's kind of hard to deny that, they've brought a lot of success to the comic movie genre, given even despite some of their flaws and faults in the last year or so. Like they are still more or less like a top dog in the game. So yeah, it would be cool. I would also not be shocked to see Sony Pictures go there and present Venom: The Last Dance and Kraven. It wouldn't shock me at all to see them go to Hall H and present that as well. So, yeah.
Some big ticket presentations that I'm hopefully I get to see as well. But my biggest thing is just trying to like take in as much value in that convention as I can, because usually at conventions I've unfortunately saw it as more just like, oh, I'm buying a ticket in order to buy more exclusive merch and stuff, which like I want to break that habit. I actually want to go to conventions to enjoy my time being there and have like a purpose to be there as well, like how you have an agenda that you want to fulfill while you're there too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I think that is a good way to kind of like wrap up our interview for Phil. Unless Max, did you have any final thoughts or questions?
Oh no, go this series that me and Rhea cooked up is to signal boost people that deserve it. It only really works if you engage with the series and you go sub to Phil. He's done his groundwork of being on a lot of panels. Now he's probably he said he might be building up his main channel. Go support him on Threads, Instagram, YouTube. Support Rhea getting back into content creating. We had 185 viewers for the debut episode. It's only up from here, Rhea. People want to hear from you as well, including Phil. And one of your strengths is you have a great reach of a lot of great, amazing people. So I can't wait to see who's next. And Phil, don't be a stranger either. Hang around. I'd love to have you on my show too.
Absolutely.
And I'll be there to support your channel.
Yeah, man. Just shoot me a message on Instagram. Shoot me a stream link.
Now I know I was sparking up a dead end with the Twitter. I was like, why can't I get a hold of Phil? Okay. So, Instagram. Yes. Now
you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Phil, for giving us, a bit of your time on your weekend. And I just, appreciate you always, be making yourself available to support any type of, podcast that either I host or that, you contribite on. So always elevating the conversation, and always a pleasure to speak with you. So
back at you. Yeah. It's always a blast getting to talk to you. I mean, we have a lot of things in common. We're of that same age group. So we're very like-minded in a lot of ways. And, Max, I always like seeing a lot of, I wouldn't say contentious, but there's a lot of interesting energy on your streams too.
Interesting energy is the best way to describe that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you spin that? Woo! Come check out the interesting energy on MME.
There you go. There's your new new log line.
Now that people have watched the debut episode of Have You Met, I can honestly say you've met Phil. So there you go. I think
Definitely.
we'll end it there. If that's okay with you, Rhea, please support the series and Phil and Rhea and myself. And we'll see you next time, I believe. Bye, everyone. Stay cool. Stay cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Stay out of the sun. Yeah. Bye.